Welcome to the High Ground Podcast. I'm Stevie W.
And Callum.
So we're back with another In Defense of, and today we're in defense of Terminator Genisys.
We are indeed.
So, a bit of statistics. In the scheme of things, this is Terminator Genisys 2015 is the second highest grossing Terminator film, with $440 million at the worldwide box office on a budget of 155. The top spot goes to Terminator 2 Judgment Day, which was in 1991 with a 520 million at the world box office on a $102 million budget. So, and the worst performing one, of course, goes with it was the original Terminator with 78 on a $6 million budget. But the funny thing is, I mean, when you're talking about 36 years ago, so for the original Terminator, because that was 84. But Terminator Dark Fate only is the one of the 6 films that ranks number 5 in terms of box office. So Terminator Genisys literally beat out the one that was that James Cameron had a hand in.
Says a lot about James Cameron, doesn't it?
Yeah, he should stick to his Avatar films. I've got, in defense of James Cameron, he has made some absolutely fantastic stuff, including like the original Terminator. Love or hate Titanic, it was a good film. And of course, you got The Abyss and True Lies.
Yeah, Aliens.
Aliens. Sorry, I can't believe I forgot Aliens. Aliens, a modern day classic.
Yeah, we have a bit of a point of contention about Terminator 2, don't we?
Yeah.
Like it's a bit sort of. I think it's a bit overrated. I don't know. Like it was groundbreaking with all the special effects, and it still looks pretty good today. But I think it's a shame that it overshadows the original Terminator so much.
I completely agree with you. This, I mean, Terminator is a dark science fiction horror.
Yeah, definitely.
A tech noir.
Yeah.
Club.
That's almost a slasher, isn't it? As well.
Yeah. I mean,
in a way.
True. Because it's the unstoppable killing machine.
Yeah.
After the female victim, he can't be reasoned with.
I love that speech. I must admit, I even got chills when they use it in Genisys when the John Connor bot says it.
That's another thing. I mean, one of the worst giveaways he did in the second trailer was.
Oh yeah, that was awful, wasn't it?
Like, thank you. Don't need to go to cinema now. We know John Connor's is a Terminator, and it's. But that aside, I mean, it is a great. Genisys is a great action film.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the first part where they find the time machine basically from the original, I think that's superb. Like you always heard about them smashing the defense grid, didn't you, in the first one? And you're like, oh, I wonder. Like it's like when you hear about the Clone Wars for the first time when you didn't know what they were, and you were like, oh, I wonder what they looked like. And it was great seeing like the future war stuff done properly, because I think we've always wanted a future war Terminator film for years, haven't we? And yeah, no, I thought that part was fantastic. I mean, it flags in some parts. The ending's a bit weak, and I don't think that John Connor Terminator thing should have happened. But
no.
Yeah, no, the action's fantastic in it. I don't see a problem with the action.
Yeah, I watched the Terminator, back to back.
Yeah.
Genisys, and they are completely different entities. I mean, one is. I mean, Terminator is a classic film, and it's flawless. And I love how I can't say low budget. I mean, it was done on a $6 million budget, so but everything, from the models, the Terminator, everything is the grittiness adds to it. Whereas now we can show, like you said, about the whole thing with Skynet, and they can show it, and they've tried it. They've tried it in Terminator 2. They've tried it in all the Terminators, showing little flash forwards, but especially in Salvation. But this one is brilliant,
Yeah.
And giving Skynet a face with Matthew Smith as he's credited as.
Yeah, that was weird seeing his name like that.
Yeah. Matt Smith, 11th Doctor. And then they had something good there. They did with that. But,
yeah, I wanted to see like the end of that sort of storyline, because he's basically Skynet in like personified, isn't he?
Yeah, I would say a humanoid version. Well, that's what Terminators are. But I didn't notice a few things about his introduction, but I will save that for a little bit later.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, the things that actually, when I first watched it, that really was a bit jolty. Was that you look at Emilia Clarke and Jay Courtney. I mean, this is no disrespect to Linda Hamilton and Michael Biehn, but Jay Courtney and Emilia Clarke are a lot more easier on the eyes, and it kind of like that was a bit jolting. That this Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese are a lot more consumer friendly.
Yeah, they're all sort of shiny and young, and the original Kyle's grubby and dirty, wasn't he? And and Linda Hamilton just looked like someone who'd just been like sort of taken out of their normal way of life. Yeah, it looks a little bit too sort of rehearsed, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and Terminator Genisys, Terminator Salvation, which I think its only redeeming feature in Salvation, this is just my opinion, is Anton Yelchin's Kyle Reese.
Yeah, I rewatched. I need to rewatch that again, but I really don't remember much about it. I think I've only seen it once or twice, maybe. But I mean, that was sort of touted as the big. Oh, we finally gave you the future war stuff, and they've got normal guns and that. And I just thought, well, where's like the laser guns and the, like the usual stuff we used to, like the nighttime scenes and all that. It just, a lot of it was just done during the day, and it looks weird.
I think they were going for with the casting of Christian Bale as well, the Batman.
Dark Knight,
Dark Knight, especially with this, you killed my father, you killed my mother, you've tried to kill me, and all that. I mean, I haven't seen the film in years.
Yeah.
I was misquoting it badly, I know. And it's kind of funny, like, you've said it yourself that about Terminator 2, how that's. Explain your theory about Terminator 2.
Right, so I think the reason this series flags so much and can't seem to pick its feet up is because of Terminator 2, ironically. Because it's lauded as like the greatest sequel of all time, isn't it? Or like one of the greatest action films of all time. Personally, Empire for me, but anyway. It's just, I think because it's so well known, and it's the one that's quoted, more often than the others, and it's even like misquoted as stuff that originated with the first one. I'll Be Back came from the first Terminator, didn't it? I think that's actually the first time Arnie ever says that in his life, isn't it?
It is, to my knowledge, yes, because everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think Terminator 2 is it's almost a meme. Like it's so culturally ingrained into film, society, I suppose, that. Doing the whole setting it as if 3 hadn't happened, or like they did with like they've done with Halloween and stuff like that, the reboot sort of thing. I think Terminator 2 always overshadows the whole series, so you're never going to get one that's going to be a sort of logical continuation. The closest thing I've ever seen that was excellent was the TV series, the Sarah Connor Chronicles.
I'm looking for that.
It was fantastic. Like, there's 2 seasons and then they cancelled it for some silly reason, and yet they still have Grey's Anatomy on after season 15 or whatever. Although, ironically, also has a Game of Thrones Sarah Connor in it with Lena Headey.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah, but that was fantastic. I mean, that captured the spirit. That was the first sort of one to do the whole, let's imagine the third one never happened. But I think in order to get a successful one, I think you need to go even further back and say, let's say 2 never happened, and let's do one straight after the first one. Have Arnie be a bad guy again. That'd be interesting. But I don't know. You could do it because of the time travel. Just explains away things like continuity and that, doesn't it? They've done. Star Trek did it.
They do this. They actually explain, and this is even before Endgame, Avengers Endgame. They explain that about alternative timelines and everything in Genisys.
Yeah, nexus points, isn't it?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, if you go back to the original Terminator, just like Halloween, the 2018 Halloween.
Yeah.
And they even say about how I heard spoiler, how about isn't Michael Laurie's brother? And
yes.
they dismiss it, and I'm like, that's it. That way you go from one to the new one. I mean, with Dark Fate, you kill off John Connor at the start. Sorry, spoilers, which you figured you've already watched. If you're listening to this, you know. And I thought that was that with Dark Fate. I left the cinema just thinking I want my money back. And with Genisys, I left the cinema thinking, oh, I had a good time. And
yeah,
I want to touch on something that because we haven't mentioned it yet. Rise of the Machine.
Yeah.
The thing in that film, I mean, it has a lot of shite in it. I'll be honest with you, but the one bit that I took away from it was that no matter what you do, you can stall destiny, but you'll never change the inevitable. What's going to happen is going to happen, and that's one thing I liked about Terminator 3. But Salvation and Dark Fate were just, the ones that they've been really touted, were just rubbish. But at least with Genisys, you got a good fun film. I mean, it's my fiance is a big Game of Thrones fan and Doctor Who fan, so you get her into cinema, but and she'd never seen her first Terminator film was Genisys, and they got her in there by saying, you got Matt Smith in it, and you got the Game of Thrones people in it, and it's sort of like, it's a good way to get them into the cinema, people that normally wouldn't see it.
Yeah.
We're talking 2015, so Game of Thrones was in its big, and Jay Courtney was beginning to be touted, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he was in Die Hard, wasn't he? He was John McClane's son, wasn't he? But he's quite a good. I think he's quite a good action star. Like what I've seen him in, he seems to be competent enough actor. But I totally do. I think that's a really good image of Genisys. I've always thought of Genisys like a greatest hits of Terminator. So like you say, if you are a new fan, and like obviously everyone knows the series, even if they've not seen it, you could go in and be like, oh, I want to see more of 1984. Like you go watch the original timeline of the first one. I also thought it was kind of like Back to the Future 2 of Terminator, where there's an alternative 1984 and an alternative 2017. I thought that was quite clever.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, you can't go back to those points in the timeline, and at least with their timeline altering thing, there's a logic to it as opposed to Dark Fate, where it's sort of like saying, well, we just killed John Connor off, the resistance and all the and there's markers. It's like it seems that Patrick Lussier and later Carl Goridis actually they put a lot of thought into time travel and the time travel and how it works within the film.
Yeah.
So rather than just say, like they did with Dark Fate, which is, like I said, I really, and I don't like to slate films because that's not what we do on this podcast, but Dark Fate was a terrible movie.
Yeah, awful.
It was. I mean, I don't want to. I really don't want to go into the whole slating Genisys thing, but one thing that did annoy me was in the trailer, the second one, they gave away the fact that John Connor had been transformed. I thought that was...
Oh, yeah.
That's one of those things you want to sit in the cinema, go, oh wow.
Apparently, Alan Taylor was really annoyed about that. Like they either consulted him or they either didn't tell him or they told him and he was annoyed and couldn't stop it or something like that. And he said it was like it just ruined the whole twist. I actually think the whole thing about John Connor being a Terminator is one of the weakest parts of the film.
I do agree, but it only hit me after watching it this time is John Connor's timeline that we know about John Connor is up to that point where Kyle gets sent back.
Yeah.
So, on the original Terminator timeline, then that is the point where they can do anything with John Connor.
Yeah.
Kyle doesn't know in the original Terminator that he's been transformed by Skynet. So that's actually quite good. We're actually seeing what happens to John Connor after the events of the original Terminator. So we're in new territory,
Yeah.
and that's for the first time in 6 films that we are actually in new territory. So I think it made more sense this time, but I tell you what didn't make any sense, and this is something that's this is a bit no, it might be nitpicking, but in the original Terminator, Kyle Reese and Sarah Connor spend one night together.
Yeah.
So if you can argue that that is a fixed point, and now we're going to an alternative timeline, obviously now because of Judgment Day keeps getting changed. But in all the other Terminator films, Sarah Connor, Kyle Reese, one night together, yeah. And then on that one night, super sperm gets her pregnant, and now, if I'm right, and I'm not a biologist or a doctor or whatever you want to call it, but deviating and not having that time at night of passion, that messes with everything. So it could have a future world where John Connor is not born, and if he is born, it won't be the same John Connor that was the leader of the resistance and saved the day, which goes into the whole territory of are you born with free thought, or are you born with the fact that your parents are going to mess you up so badly that you do become the leader of the resistance no matter what, because that's what they want you to be. So he's like one of those overpowering mums that want their children to be actors or something, and they just force it on them. So in an alternative timeline that we're in now, does John Connor, who has to be born, which could also lead to Kyle Reese probably not being look, Kyle Reese was going to be born, but John Connor, it messes everything up with John Connor.
It hurts your head though when you try and think about it all the day, doesn't it?
So Kyle Reese has to go back in time so that he can make love to Sarah Connor, so that some form of John Connor, or if they have a girl next time, can boom.
Yeah.
But
yeah, Jane Connor.
Jane Connor. Who they're casting that role?
It's strange though, isn't it? Because like the whole stuff with Kyle Reese knowing all that he does, he says, "Oh, John Connor saved me from like this or that or the other, and he taught me this, and we have to fight the machines." Really, he told Sarah Connor that, and she told John Connor for him then to tell Kyle Reese. So it's that sort of weird inherited loop of information, isn't it, that has no origin. It just hurts the head.
And when he's going back in time and with the whole time travel thing, he said he remembers a past that didn't exist, that he didn't know.
Yeah.
So he's got both timelines in his head. So he can tell himself about Genisys. And it's all crazy, but it is a very complicated film.
It is, yeah. Maybe that's how Khan found out about Genisys.
Yeah. I was just watching Ricardo Montalban the other day. It's supposed to be 3D. It was pretty good.
Oh, yeah, I forgot he was in that.
That's rough to do that one. Star Trek Into Darkness.
Yeah, oh god.
For the record, Ricardo Montalban. I like Benedict Cumberbatch, but Ricardo Montalban every day of the week.
Oh yeah, definitely. Funny you should mention Star Trek. I think Genesis feels a little bit like a Star Trek episode in terms of the complexity of everything.
Sorry, that was like, that thing to fall over. At least Star Trek, they know how to do it because they've done it so many times.
Yeah, well, it's their get out of jail free narrative card, isn't it? Time travel.
Yeah. We want
You
someone
can
like,
just you can negate any complicated narrative by just saying, "Oh, time travel is anything can happen."
that's how you get a lot of good recurring roles. I would
Yeah,
time travel. Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out later. Real.
I actually one thing I do like about Genesis is the use of the T1000.
Mm.
I really like that, like because it's like they're sort of throwing everything they've got to try and stop what's going on, and it's good to see like the T800 and the original, Terminator 1 Arnie and the T1000 in the same film. I thought that was really cool. It goes back to the whole greatest hits thing, like to get new fans interested in the previous installments.
If Skynet are losing, they are going to throw everything, including the kitchen sink, at them.
Yeah.
Which will also be a part of T1000 after it's just transformed into it, but
Yeah.
yeah. And you say about T1000, again, we are in major spoiler territory. When at the end where Pops gets transformed into a T1000.
Yeah.
I actually thought Arnie was good in the film.
Yeah, I thought it was great. It's nice to see him with. Apparently, the grey hair was his actual hair.
Ah.
So it's nice to see him look normal for a change, like not because I was quite scared they were going to CG him, and they did a little bit, like in some of the, the scenes that were supposed to be set during the first time. That's one of my only points of contention. Like I really love those scenes where they've recreated them, but at the same time, I just thought, could you not just play the footage of the original film back in CG new Arnie into it, because it was weird not seeing Bill Paxton as the punk at the beginning.
We love Bill Paxton, and
yeah, definitely.
And when it's on, and I was watching, I was just like, yeah, no one, there's no everyone other than Bill Paxton. Bill Paxton,
Nah.
It was only a small role, but it's kind of cool because he's been killed by a alien predator and a Terminator.
Yeah, he's the only person.
Yeah, and he's in James Cameron's Aliens. I mean, come on, him and Kyle Reese, Michael Bay. I mean, that is.
Yeah, Hudson.
I'm Hudson. He's Hicks.
It's so quotable, that film, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the sort of thing you miss from James Cameron's old writing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the way characters talk to each other. I think that's what made the original first two Terminator films so resonant. Was they were science fiction, but they were clever as well, and the character work was really good in them. Because a lot of sci-fi films, it's sort of they're cutouts, aren't they, or archetypes.
I mean, I know it's a bit off subject, but the colonial Marines. I mean, you've got Alien and Aliens, which are completely different entities, but they both work perfectly. They do. It's because they're both horror, but different type of horror. I mean, of course, Aliens is more action, but when you watch the Terminator back to back with Genisys, they don't feel like they should be in the same. They're not in the same franchise. They don't seem. I mean, it's like it's like a children's watered down version for a mainstream audience because they want to get as many people in, even with the color palette. I mean, I think the color palette for the Terminator is superb, and I could imagine superheroes. I know Alan Taylor did Dark World, which is one of the least well received Marvel films, but you could imagine superheroes in the Genisys world. You could.
Yeah, it's quite sort of shiny, isn't it, and like really polished. Whereas I think one of the great things about the original was how gritty and how dark it did look, and even the scene at the end where the endoskeleton, it's obviously stop motion. I think that, I've heard loads of people say, oh, it looks dated, but to me it adds to the freakiness of the way the Terminator moves.
Yeah.
Like Ed 209 and Robocop. it just makes it more surreal that rather than it looks dated.
I completely agree. I mean, I'm having brain freeze. The guy did the Ed 209.
Phil Tippett.
Phil Tippett, yeah. I mean, master of it, and stop motion is
Yeah.
superb. And it was Stan Winston who did all the Terminator stuff, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, and the computer generated effects on Genesis was done by a company called Legacy Effects, which is Stan Winston's effects school now. So they kind of kept the tradition going, even if it is CG now.
I mean, you said about CG. I mean, when I was watching Genesis, I was being very, very critical, and I like the CG in it. I think it actually worked, and the sequence with, I mean, the 1984 sequence where Arnie's fighting when Pops is fighting the Terminator. I thought it was superb. I thought, they've tried de-aging before. They tried it in Salvation with him, but this one they nailed it. Like you said, they should have integrated, like you were saying, they should have integrated the original punks. But other than that, the fight between Pops and the Terminator is superb.
Yeah, I mean the guy that did like the body double work for 1984 Arnie. Apparently in the audition he was sort of quoting Arnie lines, and
Nice.
A combination of that with like how buff he was. Apparently even Arnie was like, yeah, if that looks like me, here's you, cast that guy.
Nice. One thing, I'm going to go a little bit critical at the end. When you got the Skynet, you got the young version of Skynet before it starts growing and morphing into I'm going to call it to Matthew Smith. It reminded me too much like the Red Queen from Resident Evil.
Yeah, very much so. I was, especially with the projectors, where it has like the image of it appearing and they keep shooting the projectors. That really reminded me of Resident Evil.
And we like Resident Evil, for the record.
Oh yeah, Resident Evil is fucking great.
Yeah, we should we'll do a podcast on one of the Resident Evils, or commentary track. Commentary tracks are coming once we get out of lockdown.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I don't care, we like the Resident Evil movies.
Can you believe they're 20 years old next year? The first one.
Okay, we are not doing Resident Evil. So we'll be doing Resident Evil. We'll leave the original Resident Evil for next year. So coming 2022, Resident Evil commentary track. You got 1 year to wait. But,
don't say we haven't planned everything.
Yeah, we do. It's a little interesting thing that I noticed. Yeah. Now I want to make sure that I actually say this right, because it's one thing I think. Okay. Yeah, I noticed a little curious thing, because you're saying about the holograms, yeah?
Yeah.
Now, when, okay, let's go back in time to 1980. How do you first see the Emperor in Empire Strikes Back?
As a hologram.
How do you see Skynet?
As a hologram?
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
I thought that was a trick question there for a second.
In the third act, you got the hologram of John. You got the hologram Matthew Smith, which is like the Emperor from Star Wars, and then you got Anakin Skywalker or John Connor, who were both tempted and converted to the dark side.
Oh, another nice little. That was a good little notice.
Thank you. I saw it and I was like going, Emperor? When I was watching it, I was like thinking, because John Connor, who's like the hero, like Anakin was, is converted to the dark side, and even though he, the Skynet assimilates John Connor, but the John Connor, absorbs all John Connor's memories and is going back, and it follows the Anakin's transformation into Darth Vader, and they evolve.
Very nice.
Thank you.
I never saw that. That's quite good. I did. Do you know one thing I did think? Again, bringing it back to Star Trek, I did think the whole John Connor Terminator thing was kind of like just the Borg.
I did not see that, but you are right.
Just the because I think it's more like it's like a nano technology, isn't it, that infects people and turns them into Terminators. It's quite a good idea, actually. I do think I just don't think they should have chosen it with John Connor.
I'm going to disagree with you on that because it is. I actually, after watching it this time, you're watching it again. If it had been the twist that we'd actually, like instead of seeing it on the trailer, then it would have worked super. It would have been brilliant. And the fact that we don't, and if they hadn't messed with the timeline so much, and if we'd gone for the original timeline where Kyle Reese gets killed and then John Connor gets assimilated into a Terminator, then it would have worked. But I just think that it's a good idea, but it was just ham-handedly done, especially with the trailer. And like I said earlier, we don't know anything about what happens to John Connor after Kyle Reese is sent back in time. So they could theoretically use that plot device in another Terminator film where the Resistance is fighting John Connor and Skynet. But I mean, it was obviously set up for a Terminator trilogy. They were touting the Terminator Genisys trilogy before it even came out, and they just had cold feet and ended up making going from a film that generated $440 million on a $155 million dollar budget to make an $185 million cost, shelling out $185 million and only making back $261. I mean, there's a big difference between $440 million and $261 million. And of course, this is a world box office.
It's almost like the other analog I have to that is, imagine if they'd made Batman Begins and went, that didn't make that, because that didn't really make that much money compared to The Dark Knight. No. And imagine if they'd went, we're sick of that, we're not going to do another Batman. It really annoys me, like the way they think. I mean, like you say, and then they went on to make an even poorer film.
Yeah, I mean, Batman. I've just found my notes. Batman Begins made 300. Batman Begins made $373 million at the worldwide box office, whereas Dark Knight made over $1 billion.
Yeah.
So it is you're 100% right, but then again, look at the studio. The studio had faith in Christopher Nolan, and this is again. I think this goes back down to word of mouth and fanboys, because fanboys always know what they want, and they want a film by the director of Deadpool and the creator of Terminator, and you have a mess. You do, rather than letting someone. I mean, I go back to the 80s. You make a horror film that makes a small bit of money, and it makes its money back on the home entertainment market. Then you make a sequel, and then if a sequel stalls, you go and do another one just so that you can get it back on track. Now studios, they're too interested in, well, this hasn't made that much, so we're just going to nix it here. Or fanboys are being very vocal about it, so we've got to go straight to reboot because it's not what they want. We should not be catering. Fans and audience, especially the minority, should not be dictating content, because we've all known that they don't know what they want, because you don't see the people that are enjoying it going out there, because you don't need a soapbox to stand on just to say, I really enjoyed this film and I liked it because of this and this, which I know is what we're doing. But people, especially studios, will listen to the 4 or 5 people that are being vocal because they don't like it.
Yeah, I think like you say, you go back to like the 80s, and the Friday the 13th films, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, they went on for years and years, and all their sequels diminished returns, but they carried on because it was lucrative to do so, to make a film so cheap and just make the money back quickly. Whereas I suppose it's kind of like nowadays, like you say, they reboot everything as soon as there's one tiny little failure, and it's kind of like trying to write a book and starting again after every if you made a mistake on a chapter. Going back to the beginning again. Oh no, I'm not going to carry on with that. It doesn't. It's kind of silly. It doesn't really make any sense. I mean, probably the only company recently that have sort of not abandoned anything because of weak installments as the MCU.
Yeah, but then again, that was only on phase two. That was with Dark Fate.
Yeah,
I mean, sorry, not Dark. Yeah,
Dark World.
Dark World. Sorry, I was doing Terminator. Dark World. Saw Dark World. I mean, I wasn't a fan of Doctor Strange, but you don't. No, you don't. I mean, I know DC. They try and fix things in editing when they're
Yeah,
not getting the things through, but this is something we've said before. Avengers Endgame. What do? One of the central characters is Ant-Man, pivotal to the plot of the whole film. And
yeah,
Ant-Man and Wasp and Ant-Man aren't exactly the biggest selling MCU films. They deliberately go into Thor: Dark World and make it a big plot point, so you have to watch Thor: Dark World, and that was one of the least well-received films. It's because they're confident in their audience. They are
yeah,
those Terminators, and a lot of other studios aren't confident that they're going to get their audience back. Can you imagine Terminator saying, "Oh, we're going to go into Dark Fate because there's things we like in Dark Fate, and there's things in Rise of the Machine, or even one we're discussing, the Genesis." They'd be going, "Well, I ain't going to see that because they're going into a film that I don't like. I'm going to cry about it now. I'm going to complain before the
yeah,
film's even out." I mean, if studios listen to people's decision, let's just look at Batman, for example. Heath Ledger wouldn't have been cast, and Michael Keaton would not have been cast because people are crying about it. They were at the
yeah.
time. The ones that after he came out, even James Bond, because of the uproar, James Bond are casting a blonde. But
Yes, I think in a way sometimes fans are their own worst enemies, aren't they? Because they think they know what they want, and even when we do know what we want, we don't know
no,
really.
I always go down to the one that I always use is that for years I had my perfect ending for Pirates of the Caribbean. This
Yeah,
was after they did number three. I was like, this is it. I know how I want Pirates of the Caribbean to end. I know how I want Jack's arc to end. Then I saw Salazar's Revenge, or Dead Man Tell No Tales, depending on where you are. And I was like, you know what? I was wrong all those years. That's how you end a Pirates of the Caribbean thing. But I didn't complain that all these years I had this how I want this to do. It was like, wow, they did something better than I could have done. But a
yeah,
lot of people go, no, it's not my ending. It's not how I wanted it. I want these characters to be doing like this. Game of Thrones season
yeah,
8 petitions to redo the season 8, and people moaning that and the amount of things I'm reading on the internet now about Disney to reboot the last 3 Star Wars films. I'm like, why?
yeah. It's stupid, isn't it? Like, it's selfish as well. I mean, you don't own that franchise just because you're a fan of it. I mean, yeah, you have investment in it, and you do kind of keep it going by paying to take the tickets to see it. But I just, it's the entitlement that really annoys me, and the whole, the whole stupid, oh, this film, X film ruined my life, and I always think about what George Lucas said, where he's, everyone was prequel bashing when it was cool, and he was just kind of like, well, you must have had a really boring life then,
Yeah.
if a little film's ruined it.
I'm going to say, anyway, whenever we're deviating onto Star Wars territory again, but I just want to think it's so cool that Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are mining the prequel trilogy for stuff. I think that is
Yeah,
superb. And if you look at a lot of what is quote Star Wars canon now, a lot of it, especially about the Jedi's, a lot of it comes from the prequels. So George Lucas's 3 films that everybody hated goes to show you that they're loving the stuff content now, aren't they?
yeah. I mean, I always think maybe 10, 15 years from now, would they be doing that with like something like Genesis? Like, oh, maybe we should have let that carry on, or take stuff from that and put it in whatever Terminator content will be out in the future. I actually think a TV series would be a good way to go again.
Yeah, well, I don't think they'll do the Genesis timeline, but it would be nice.
Yeah,
It would. I mean, the cast is the cast. Like I said, once I got used to to Amelia Clark and Jay Courtney, I thought, as not being the same as Michael Bain and Linda Hamilton, I was like, I was invested in it, and I was invested
yeah,
in the whole thing, and they go on about the whole fingerprints and everything, and Kyle Reese meeting his younger self, and the ending where Kyle talks to his younger self to remember about Skynet and how they changed the whole changing of the times to make it relevant with Skynet being an app. Which if you went back to
Yeah.
1954 and said, "Oh, we're going to turn Skynet into an app," they'd be going, "What's an app?"
Yeah.
It changed with the technology, so that things like answer phones and everything, and listening to music on the Walkmans with the tapes and everything is dated, so they have to make it new for a new audience. But it's great if you're going to introduce someone to that world, and if they're interested, they will go back. And
Yeah, I really liked the whole thing about it being an app. There's a scene. The scene where John Connor comes in before they know he's a Terminator and takes them from the hospital, and he's saying, "Yeah, everyone's because obviously Sarah and Kyle haven't seen smartphones and that, so they're like, oh, everyone just seems obsessed with it." And he sort of says, "Yeah, mankind's brought about its own extinction if Gen goes online because we're all connected to everything."
Yeah.
And I really like that. It's true, isn't it? I mean, I think that it's set in 2017, isn't it? The future bits.
Yeah.
When they go back in time, second time. So it was a couple of years ahead of when the film was out, but nothing too drastic. I forgot. Can't believe we haven't met J.K. Simmons yet.
Yeah. Oh, J.K. Simmons is brilliant. I mean, I'm sorry, Spider-Man. I got to admit, I have to go again. I'm gonna deviate. At the end of spoilers, I figured if you're listening to this, you've probably seen all these films. But J.K. Simmons at the end of Far From Home. I mean, I'm sorry, when people go, I was just sitting there going, yeah, I kind of figured. Not that I knew he was going to be in it, but I was like, who else is going to? It's like, if you're going to have J. Jonah Jameson, who else can play J. Jonah Jameson? I think he was brilliant, and he was great in Terminator.
Yeah, he's Officer O'Brien, wasn't he?
Yeah. I just thought he was, and that nobody believes. But he just wants pictures of Spider-Man.
Yeah. It was kind of like it was a bit of a throwaway part, wasn't it? But it was nice to see, like, because you don't ever see that in the Terminator world, do you? People, like, the normal person side of it, or where people would obviously say, well, robots, what are you on about?
Yeah. Although,
but it's nice to do that.
The closest thing you got is that psychiatrist who was in Terminator.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think when he was first cast, a lot of people theorised that's who he was playing, Dr. Silverman. But then it turned out he was a cop in it. But yeah, he's the only other character.
But he's got, at least he's the honest character, because whereas Silverman can make money, all he sees is I can make money off of this. But it's I've mentioned the whole "I'll be back" when Pops jumps from the helicopter.
Yeah, that's cool. The trailer moment.
Yeah. I want to be sedated by the Ramones on the or when they're in the 2017. She's listening.
When she's listening to the to the Walkman. Yeah, I like that scene. It's quite nice that Sarah still has this one foot in the 80s.
Yeah, and it got me, because I mean Ramones punks, and it's kind of funny, like in the future, and especially in like your RoboCop sequels, the future is all done by punks.
Yeah,
there's punks everywhere. Yeah, so it's kind of like having the Ramones in it. I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it's about time the Ramones got some respect.
I'm not a big fan, if I'm honest.
Oh, I'm gonna pretend you didn't say that.
No, I get why they're so influential and stuff, but I've just never really been a punk fan.
I like Ramones. I mean, I can't stand the Sex Pistols. Overrated.
No, I don't either. Or the Clash.
I've tried to get in the Clash. I respect the Clash for what they do, but I just, you can say I can respect them, but I just don't like their music. And I've tried so many times to listen to the Clash. But the Ramones, I do like the Ramones. But so I like that. There's a lot of exposition in the film, isn't there? With explaining
Yeah,
what's going
I
on
think that's the
all the
problem
time.
with the time travel stuff, isn't it? Like even even when Arnie's talking about the Nexus points, and Kyrie sort of has to stand in for the audience and say, "Does he speak any other way? Because I don't understand what the fuck he's talking about."
And you know, now, yeah. So Matt Smith. Do you like Matt Smith in it?
Yeah, I thought it was a shame you didn't get to see more of him. Actually, wasn't it? 'Cause he's sort of plays a bad guy quite good, actually, doesn't he? I've never seen him play a bad guy before. I don't think.
I've seen him go dark in a couple of. I think it's a Good Man Goes to War episode. There's a bit where he shows a bit of it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but full on villain. I don't think he's. I've ever seen him do it. I mean, he has done other films outside of Doctor Who, so he may have possibly done it. But
Yeah,
Alan Taylor also has another link with Doctor Who, with another film he's directed.
Alan Taylor, Doctor Who link. I don't know. You've got me on that one.
Christopher Eccleston in Dark World.
Oh yeah, jeez.
I know everyone forgets he's in
Malekith.
that, don't they? That's how memorable his villain is.
Yeah, he plays Malekith. He's one of the Dark Elves.
Dark Elves, yeah.
And Matt Smith is local. He's from Northampton.
He is, yeah. Northampton, yeah, that's right.
So, yeah. So that's where his
My
accent.
sorry.
Isn't that? I mean, that's why he's. I wouldn't say he's got a Northampton accent. I wouldn't even say Northampton has an accent.
Yeah, I was going I was going to say my fiance, her cousin, used to work at one of the. Can't remember. I think it was one of the stadiums when she was a student for the extra money and that. And oh no, it was one of the coffee shops, and he bought a coffee, and she was like, "Are you Matt Smith?" Apparently, he was really nice though. So
The one you'd have to ask, you would.
I would, yeah, I'd be like, "Are you Doctor Who?"
Which, yeah, I've got a story with a Terminator link. I was walking into HMV in Leicester.
Oh yeah.
And walking out was Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses, who did the You Could Be Mine from Terminator 2, and I was like, they did a book signing that he'd done a book signing there, and I didn't even know about it because I'd have gone to get a book signed. But just bumping into him, and it was him. I know because I actually followed him and asked him. First time and only time I've ever done anything like that. But I just had to know if it was Duff McKagan. And I'm sorry, but You Could Be Mine is an absolutely brilliant song.
The video's good as well, actually, isn't it?
Bit of the ending where it's the waste of ammo.
Yeah, I almost forgot about that. It's just I remember when I first saw the video of that, I was in stitches.
It also reminds me of the video for Big Gun from Last
Action Hero, yeah.
They both got that by AC/DC. They both got that kind of like vibe to it. But maybe that's the one thing about Genisys that was actually missing is it doesn't have a good rock song to it other than Blue. But it's
AC/DC also did the soundtrack for Maximum Overdrive.
That I've heard of it.
Emilio Estevez. Yeah, it's based on a Stephen King story called Trucks, where like all the machines come to life. It's basically like an evil Transformers. It's also the only film Stephen King's ever directed, obviously because it's so shite. Yeah. But because I like when rock bands do the soundtracks for films. I think it's quite like them getting involved is pretty cool.
Yeah, I do agree, and although you could argue that the soundtrack to Iron Man 2 is pretty much AC/DC.
Yeah, that he is the official. That's the official soundtrack of Iron Man, isn't it? The character, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
I love that in Avengers Assemble, where you when Loki's sort of kicking off in Germany, and you can hear Thunder. Is it Thunderstruck? Or Shoot to Thrill, isn't it? Yeah. Sorry. As he comes in, you just think, "Oh, Iron Man's coming." I love that.
I do. I do agree.
I mean, I almost think You Could Be Mine should be the Terminator's theme.
They used it in Salvation, didn't they? Again.
Yeah, in the helicopter, wasn't it?
Yeah, there's a bit when the bike's on the road, across the road.
Oh right, yeah.
But yeah,
Because obviously after a nuclear apocalypse, all the radio stations are still going.
yeah, and we'll still. I'm sorry, if the nuclear apocalypse is what's going to cause us to actually have rock music on the radios and have people listen to real music rather than the shite that's
Yeah,
yeah, then actually
sign me up.
yeah. But maybe that's what we need. We need everybody to turn into punks and everything right now, just rather than being the apocalypse where everybody just goes shopping.
Yeah, that's the real apocalypse.
Yeah, that's Dawn of the Dead. Again, again, yeah. Dawn of the Dead is George Romero is up in heaven with God and going. Yep, you're right.
Told you all.
Yeah. See, not too far fetched now, is it? That it all goes shopping.
I think there's probably a lot of scientists as well that watch Terminator and think, "Told you."
Oh, yeah.
One day maybe.
You got. I mean, everybody is. The way it is now with the machines and everything, it's sort of like everybody doesn't know where everybody else is because you've got your phones on you, which are trackers. People are
Yeah.
happy to give their information out to where they are and their location, and these are the same people that think the government's putting trackers in the water and this and that and the other, and they're walking around.
Yeah.
They're walking around with their little location above their head with their phones on, going. I'm sick of the government trying to force this on us because they only do it so they can put a tracker on us. Sent from such and such and such and such.
Well, there's even on iPhone. There's even an app called Find My iPhone, and you can also find your friends' iPhones if they allow you access to do it. I mean, it's a good idea in a way, like in case you lose your phone or if you think your friend's gone missing or something like that. But it is kind of, above everyone else, the author that would be going, "I fucking told you all," was George Orwell.
Yes. Big
Isn't
Brother
it?
is watching. So
I think Skynet's just like a sort of natural extension of that
yeah.
fear of technology, isn't it? Like it's, it fires all the nuclear missiles because it deems us to be a threat, even though we made it. It's. I think it's almost like a mirror of our own aggression, isn't it?
Yeah, environmentally, aren't we the threat?
Well, yeah. I mean, maybe nuking us. It's just Skynet saying it's the least. It's the most viable option.
If the planet, how would we're going into a very dark territory here. But what would the planet be like without us? It's like saying it's Thanos, right?
Yeah.
So it depends on what we're talking about. If we're about the existence of, if we're talking about self-preservation for the machines, or if we're talking about, I think this is for another podcast, science fiction, and did it get it right? Areas in which.
Oh God, I think we're living in science fiction now. I think it'd be quite hard to sort of. It's getting harder and harder to write original things in that genre now because, well, you go back 50 years and the stuff we all do now is what all those books were talking about. Like you say, we've got phones where you can talk to someone in Australia right away now if you have an internet signal, or the internet itself. You can, if you go, what was that guy's name again? Google, done. Like song lyrics. It's we have like the world's knowledge at our fingertips.
But we
It's
could
quite.
also we could also make our own knowledge up now, as in terms of
Yeah.
fake news, which fake
Yeah.
news is, sorry, I hate to go in this territory, but fake news travels faster than real news. I remember when you used to, I have IMDb up when we're doing the podcast, so that if I need to grab some information. But in the old days, we'd have to have Halliwell's.
Yeah.
Or you have
Yeah.
a big
Well,
stack of film
with
magazines.
anything that you needed to remember, if you sort of go, I can't remember this or that. I'm sure it was, and you'd have to go to the library, get a book out, or if you had the book on you, you could find it. But yeah, I mean, it's a luxury now. Just going, I don't know what that is. Just Google it. Google's a verb now.
Yeah.
It's just
Or
weird.
or when you ask Alexa things.
Yeah, that's even creepier, isn't it? That's like HAL 9000 territory. That is, isn't it?
They have you can ask it anything. I mean, you're watching a film and you can you're doing other things and you go. I've got to be very careful because they're very sensitive. you go Alexa, then give it the question about the film, and it will give you an answer. It will. But going back to the whole Genesis thing, if you were to only, which is actually your favourite of the Terminator sequels?
Well, going on quality, it's going to have to be Terminator 2.
Yeah.
But if you to make it easier and say past Terminator 1 and 2, which it's definitely this one. I think this one's the most enjoyable. It's the one. It has really good set pieces. I mean, it's got the action's fantastic, like you said earlier, and the actors are all quite good as well. I'm not keen on Jason Clarke as John Connor, but he's in no way sort of unusable. I mean, I've always wanted them to bring Edward Furlong back now, because he'd be the right age to be John Connor, as John Connor is now, isn't he? But I think it's the best and it's the most serviceable, and it's the one that's, Terminator Dark Fate was boring. That's the thing about it. And Salvation, they're boring. And Terminator films, that's the worst sin you could commit in an action film, isn't it?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, for me, I like Terminator 2 for what it is. I find it a bit of a hard watch. It's groundbreaking, but I just want a bit of fun. Genisys all the way.
Yeah.
And yeah, I totally, I agree with everything you said, and they are. I went into Dark Fate the same way I went into Genisys and all the Terminator films, because other than the first two, I've seen the other four at the cinema, and every time I go and see one of these films, I go in wanting to make a good film. So I go out, and even before Dark Fate came out, I was like, I can't wait till this comes out. So I'm gonna love this film. Then I'll buy the box set. Then I walked out and said, I ain't buying the box set if that's in it.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's Genisys. If they'd done a Genisys trilogy, I'd have been more than happy. But that's not going to happen now. But yeah. So closing comments.
I just think, like, if you haven't seen it, like, check it out. Definitely, it's a good sequel. I mean, it has its flaws and goofy moments, but what sequel doesn't? And I think if you can get past the whole Terminator 2 is God thing, I think it was perfectly serviceable as the next step in the sequel sort of continuation. So yeah, I'd say, if you haven't seen any of the Terminator films, then you're a lucky person getting to experience that for the first time. But yeah, don't stop just after 2.
I completely agree with you. Just check them out, make your own opinion up. I mean, like I said, I personally not a fan of Dark Fate.
No.
But Genisys, I really enjoy it. So
yeah, it's good. I mean, like, I'm not saying 3 and Salvation are not great, but they do have good moments. So it's still worth checking them out just to get the context and and to see those moments as well as the bad ones.
Like I said, I mean, before, is Anton Yeltsin's worth watching just for Anton Yeltsin alone.
Yeah, he was good.
And the Rise of the Machines is just worth. It's the little thing about not being able to change destiny, and there is some good moments in the third act.
Yeah, I really like the end. When you see the missiles, I thought that was really quite quite a brave thing to show. But yeah, no, I think the rest of it was kind of a retread of Terminator 2, wasn't it?
Yeah, completely. But I mean, check out the Terminator movies.
Yeah.
And we'll be back.
We will, yeah. It's a very nice ending there.
Yeah, I'm Stevie W.
And Callum.